Hello there, Mac the Third here. Just doing a little budget Wizards deck profile. This is actually the deck I'm going to be taking to Friday Night Magic in a couple of days, and I just wanted to showcase it for you and let you see what we got. This is a really budget-friendly deck. If you want to build a deck for less than $50, this is the way to go. You can build it for even less than that if you skimp on the lands, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, there are four basic types of cards in this deck: creatures, burn spells, draw spells, and land. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is very much an aggro deck. It shouldn't be too nonsensical. It should make a lot of sense. All it does is hit you really hard and make you die before you can get to your Settle the Wreckage most of the time. It's really fast. It's really crazy, and it makes you feel bad. So let's start. And of course, you saw on top Soulscar Mage. He's 1-drop, 1/2. That extra point of toughness is really valuable, just because it means he can't be killed by things like Goblin Chain Whirler. He's a much better blocker for things like Fanatical Firebrand and Bomat Courier. So he's really, really valuable. And the prowess means that he can get really big very fast. And one of the less used effects, the -1/-1 effect, basically means that if you need to kill a big creature, you can actually like do it in more than one shot over more than one turn. Say for instance you have only enough mana to cast a lightning strike and you have a lightning strike and a shock in your hand. You can kill a 5 toughness creature over 2 turns as long as you keep your Soulscar Mage handy. It also means that, especially with Soulscar Mage, you can like attack into a big creature, say attack into a 5-power creature, and deal 3 points of burn to it. So instead of dealing the 3 points of burn, you put 3 -1/-1 counters, which means it goes from being a 5/5 to a 2/2, and then the prowess on Soulscar Mage will make him into a 2/3, meaning that he will actually not die in that situation, which can be really, really valuable in making trades and making 1-for-1s instead of 2-for-1s. Next up for our 1-drops, we have the Geet 2 Lava Runner. We're also playing 4 of him. Of course, mid to late game, he becomes a 2/2-for-1 with haste, which can be really, really valuable later on. And of course, like every other creature in the deck, he carries the tag of Wizard, which is really important for a couple of other cards later down the line. Now, our next creature is Spellweaver Eternal, a card that has not seen enough play outside of Limited, in my opinion. It's such a good card. Now, his only flaw is that he is a 2/1, so being an X1, he's weak to things like Chain Whirler and Plague Mare, things like that. But he makes up for it with his prowess and afflict. So with the prowess, it means he gets really big, and the afflict means that, especially early game, like blocking him just almost isn't worth it, because you can swing in for 2, and even if they block, they're still taking 2 to the face. Afflict is a really fun mechanic that you don't see too much of in competitive play outside of Spellweaver. We have the only card that really hybridizes between burn and being a creature, and that's the new Viashino Pyromancer. When he ETBs, he deals 2 damage, so basically he's just a shock on legs, which even if you're paying the 2 and then you're losing him to something like a Goblin Chain Whirler, that still is value out of this card, as opposed to a creature like Spellweaver Eternal, where if he hits and then doesn't stick, it was like casting an empty card. It was like throwing a card away and wasting mana. Pyromancer is cool because he does something when he enters the battlefield, and he still has that tag of Wizard, making him still really valuable in the deck with the next card we're going to show. So, topping out our mana curve for our creatures and for our deck is Adeliz the Cinderwind. So she is, of course, the lord of the deck. She is flying in haste, which means that you can drop her on turn 3 and go in for 2. But really, you want to come in turn 4 with her. Like, say, drop turn 1 Soulscar, turn 2 Spellweaver, turn 3 like a Viashino and a Lava Runner, and then turn 4 you can drop Adeliz, and then your 4th mana can be spent to use up any one of your 1-drop spells to pump all of them up, because her ability is she basically gives a second instance of prowess to all of your wizard creatures, which every single creature on the battlefield is a wizard creature. So what she does is a creature like Soulscar Mage or the Spellweaver Eternal will get the +1/+1 from prowess triggering, and then also get the +1/+1 from Adelise's effect triggering. And that when that stacks, especially when you can cast 2 or 3 non-creature spells, can become really scary. One thing to note is that all of the non-creature spells in this deck are instants and sorceries. So this deck before M19 used to run several enchantments in the 2-drop spot, and although they were pretty good, they became creatures. First of all, they weren't wizards, so they didn't synergize with Adelise very well, and they also weren't instants or sorceries. So it was really a big nombo against Adelise. And especially since they weren't creatures, you were finding yourself not able to, do something with them. Sometimes leaving them on board. Even before M19 came out, I was like searching for a card to replace in the 2-drop slot for Riddle Form. So even before M19 came out, I was searching for an option of something to replace Riddle Form with. And finally, once M19 came out, we did get Viashino Pyromancer, and it's a really good card. So now we're going to move on to burn spells. Our first burn spell in the 1-drop slot is the Ever-Present Shock, again reprinted in M19, because it's just such a good card in burn. It's a cantrip that deals some damage. It doesn't really get much more simple than that. It's a 1-drop, which means that you can, if you're trying to get in for damage, in that scenario where you have, this is a really good hand, like Soulscar, Gitu, Adelise, Spellweaver, and Viashino on the board. Even if you haven't attacked with any of your creature, you've done 2 with Viashino, and then you're shocking, dealing an additional 2, and then pumping up each creature once, and then the other 2 creatures twice, and dealing a lot of damage on turn 4. Probably the most lackluster burn spell is Lightning Strike, just because it's a 2-drop, and as someone who's played a lot of Control, saying that something is expensive as a 2-drop it's kind of funny, but everything else is either a 1-drop or it pretends to be a 1-drop. But it's still one of the best burn spells in the format, unfortunately, because it does do 3 damage at instant speed to any target. And then last but not least is our Fake Lightning Bolt, Wizard's Lightning, and this is another good synergy with the Wizards, because this basically becomes Lightning Bolt when you have any creature on board, because all of your creatures are Wizards. Now the last section for non-creature spells are of course all of our draw spells and filter. Our best one of course being Opt, a card that was really cool when it was inserted back in the format and then reprinted again in Dominaria. So giving us that scry is also really important, and of course being a cantrip, meaning that it's a 1-drop spell, it draws us a card along with triggering prowess, so it can filter us through and maybe get us if we need that 4th land, or if we need, we just need another burn spell, we need another answer. This gets us 1 card deeper to where we need to go. Other cantrip draw spells is Crash Through. Its first ability is not really why we play it. We play it because it says draw a card at the bottom. But giving all of our creatures trample for 1 is really, really valuable. Obviously we play 3 of this and not 4 like Opt, just because it's not quite as good. Giving that trample can be really valuable depending on what deck you're playing against. Like if you're playing against a deck that likes to go wide, it makes lots of 1/1s like Saprolings will. Giving your creatures trample can actually be really deadly, because you have a creature like Spellweaver Eternal that then if you have Adelise out, it becomes really, really worthless to block, because it has trample. If you block it, it does 2 damage, so you have to at least block 3 damage for it to even be worth blocking, and then it's going to have trample and do more damage through. So Crash Through is another pseudo addition to the deck. It wasn't played that much beforehand, and now in the M19 version it's just another really good cantrip. A cantrip that was played from Dominaria is of course Warlord's Fury, which this one we care a little bit more about the first thing it says. Draw a card is still the most important text on the card, but First Strike can really make the difference between winning and losing games. Literally all of these cards together is probably not more than $10 or $20. The only card that's a rare that's on this board right now is of course Soulscar Mage, which you don't have to play, but I mean he's like a 50-cent dollar rare. Like he's really, really cheap, and he's so good in the deck. So even if you are going for budget, Soulscar Mage is still a really, really good option. The thing that kind of takes away from our budget aspect is, of course, the land base, which is true of any good 2-color deck or more. So Sulphur Falls is a card that even if you are trying to go budget, I would suggest trying to get as many copies as you can. 4 is ideal. It just helps fix your mana. And Sulphur Falls will not rotate, so it's worth the 20 or 30 bucks that it is to get. Probably 20. I think they're 5 each right now, 4 or 5. It's worth the $20 to get all 4 copies because it's lands are always worth buying. The other one is Spire Bluff Canal. Not necessarily as good just because it's going to be rotating soon. It is arguably the better card in an aggro deck because this will almost always come in untapped unless you're going to really grindy games and you're in a lot of trouble. If you have these, play them. I wouldn't suggest buying them at this point. I've had these since Kaladesh came out because I was playing, silly blue-red back in the day. And I just had these in a binder, pulled them out, sleeved them back up, and got to play another silly is it aggro deck. As for lands, we have 8 mountains and 4 islands. Those are what basics we're playing. This I may change this a little bit. Like as I've said, I've had some trouble getting blue mana, although I don't think it's going to be an issue. Things for sideboard, I would suggest things like Wizard's Retort is pretty good. You in your sideboard, you want to move towards control usually. For matchups against aggro, especially if you can't aggro someone, then you want to control them out. Things like Siren Storm Tamer, Wizard's Retort, Baral even is good. I think this is the most optimum version to play. When the Return to Ravnica or whatever they're going to call it comes out, we're obviously going to lose 8 cards here. Well, we're going to lose lands too, but lands will always be reprinted. There'll be good lands, probably shock lands, who knows. But I'll be interested to see what comes out. At that point, Siren Storm Tamers may be worth mainboarding. It's hard to say what really would be good. I'd run a 4th Pyromancer. But there's not going to be a card that's quite as good or useful as Soulscar Mage. There is the 3-drop bird that has prowess. I considered running, but it's keeping Adelies as the only 3-drop in the deck really, really helps your curve out. We'll see. I'll probably make an update to this deck weeks after rotation once I've settled into a new deck list. But this deck is really, really fun. Sure, it's not tier 1, but it can compete with the best of them. It really can. Alright, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.